You know, one of the things I appreciate about modern culture is how quick and efficient everything's become. See, it used to be that you had to wait at least a generation to see your favorite childhood movies and franchises get completely bastardized by pointless, creatively bankrupt, soul-sucking cash grab remakes. But Disney, bless their shriveled black hearts, have found a way to fast-track the whole process with Moana, a live-action remake of an animated movie that came out in 2016. What are we even doing here, lads? Like seriously, this is like some kind of weird social experiment at this point. How much of the same crap can you shove down people's throats before the gag reflex kicks in and they try to fight you off? Well, in Tatiana's case, you'd be quite surprised. Anyway, the point I'm making here is that live-action Moana, coming barely a decade after the original and hot on the heels of Moana 2, has got to be one of the most baffling movie releases of the entire year, or any year for that matter. I just can't figure this one out, man. Snow White, for all its faults, I could at least understand on a commercial level because it was a remake of a movie from the 1930s. This is a remake of a film so new that the little kids who watched it back in the day are still teenagers now. Anyway, all of this is my way of saying that Moana is a bad movie. Not bad in the same way that Supergirl was bad. Jesus, it might suck, but it's not dangerous. But bad in the way that a low-effort band charging the same ticket prices as the original is bad. Bad in the way that a cheap Temi knockoff of some high-quality brand furniture is bad. Ultimately, what this film is a copy, a lazy replica, an inferior clone of something that was actually pretty good. A movie that has absolutely no reason for EXI stunts except the hope of squeezing more money out of Disney audiences. And apparently it's not doing too well at that either. Anyway, let's get the plot synopsis over with, and this should be an easy one because it's literally the exact same story as the original. So anyway, Moana is a young girl living on an island in the South Pacific, and in typical Disney fashion, she dreams of leaving her small life behind and exploring the wider world. But her family tell her, no, she has to stay behind and take command of the tribe. But when hits the fan, her grand tells her that some named Maui once stole the heart of an ocean goddess like 1,000 years ago, and if they don't find him and get him to return it soon, their island's going to get destroyed by a bad volcano demon. That right there is her quest. So she sets sail and immediately gets shipwrecked. But that's okay because she just so happens to wash up on Maui's island so that the rest of the plot can happen, and so the movie becomes a kind of road trip body comedy on the ocean where Moana has to convince Maui to return the heart, but he's like, nah, I'm not doing that until you help me get my magical fish hook back. Jesus Christ, talk about busy work. You've had like 1,000 years to get this hook back, mate. Are you seriously telling me you had to wait for some teenage girl to help you out? Anyway, so they get the hook, and they go back to the island in time for the volcano demon to attack them, and Maui redeems himself by distracting it long enough for Moana to get to the demon, only to realize the demon is the ocean goddess who turned evil after Maui stole her heart. So anyway, she puts it back, and then everything's fine again. And that's it, that's the plot for Moana. Right. Now, how best to describe this movie? Well, you know when you reheat a takeaway the next day because you're too lazy and hungover to make yourself a proper meal, it's the same food you remember, and it sort of looks the same, but it's all gone a bit stale and unpleasant now, and you've got a sneaking suspicion it's going to leave you glued to the toilet bowl for the rest of the day. Well, that's basically live-action Moana for you. Like I said before, it's practically a shot-for-shot remake of the original, adding absolutely nothing new, expanding on none of the characters, scenes, or world building, and ultimately leaving you scratching your head why they even bothered to make it. You'd get the same exact effect if you ran the original through an AI filter and just told it to render it in photorealistic graphics. In fact, it would probably be a better experience because then you wouldn't have to deal with some of the worst prosthetics, least convincing wigs, laziest acting, and ugliest visuals I've seen outside of Rings of Power. I don't know what they were thinking with The Rock's ridiculous wig and unconvincing muscle suit, but holy God, seeing his tiny old man head perched atop this gigantic disproportionate body almost makes Hassan look normal. On that subject, actually, I suspect one of the big reasons for making this film now instead of waiting the obligatory 20 years was to get out there while The Rock was still young enough to pull it off. The thing is, I hate to say it, but I think that ship might have sailed already. I can't fault the man's work ethic, obviously, but no amount of pumping iron can change the fact he's in his mid-50s now, and facially at least, he looks it, especially after dropping a bunch of weight recently. The Maui from the animated movie was this big, expressive, larger-than-life character. He wasn't meant to look like a realistic human because, well, he wasn't, and it worked. The Rock's voice, combined with the over-the-top animations, hid his acting shortcomings, and it was a perfect combination. Now he just looks like, well, The Rock, and that is not a good thing in this movie. On the plus side, though, I can at least say that Catherine Lagaya does a good job as Moana. She's a good physical match for the character, she plays well off The Rock, and for someone who's never done a feature film before, I think she's a pretty good presence on screen. That's about it as far as my praise goes, though. Visually, this film's another massive downgrade. Again, the animated movie was this vibrant, colorful cartoon world that looked gorgeous because you could take it in the spirit it was intended. Trying to ground it in reality just leaves it looking flat and dull, and even worse, most of it looks like it was shot against a volume screen. The backgrounds look weirdly dimensionless and lit all wrong, and it's such a jarring disappointment because you'd think shooting in real locations would be the big pull of a film like this. All that being said though, at least the production worked hard to cast authentic actors and do justice to Polynesian culture. Moana creatives on working closely to honor Polynesian culture and traditions and why representation matters in a live-action film. You sure about that? You sure about that? Oh, really? That's interesting, isn't it? Interesting how cultural fidelity and authentic casting suddenly becomes important when your movie is about the right kind of people. In fact, I'm pretty sure I made this exact point in my Odyssey video. There's this weird assumption that every other culture, race, and ethnic group in the world are entitled to their own unique stories, history, and identity, and it all has to be carefully fenced off, protected, and respected. Whereas anything created by white Europeans is treated like some generic all-you-can-eat buffet that everyone's allowed to stick their hands into. Ladies and gentlemen, we officially live in clown world. That's the only way I can describe it at this point. Generations from now, academics are going to point to this period in human history and laugh our asses off about the sheer depth of our retardation. Anyway, I think I've wondered enough with this one. What I'm trying to say with all this pish is that the Moana live-action remake sucks, and if you want a viewing experience that won't make you lose